Hi, listeners. It's that time of year. You thought I was going to say holidays, right? Well, yes, Small and Gutsy wishes everyone a happy, safe, and healthy holiday season. But you know what else it is? It's our 50th episode. And in honor of that and the end of year giving opportunity, we hope you will consider giving a gift to any of the 50 organizations we've featured over this past year. And if you want to support Small and Gutsy to keep us going, please think about becoming our Patreon sponsor. And you can for as little as $1 a month. Or if you want some very cool Small and Gutsy limited edition merchandise, check us out on www.patreon.com/smallandgutsy. Leveling the playing field is an interesting idiomatic expression, and to me, it means enjoying the benefits of living in a society that provides opportunities that allow each of us to shine and fill our individual potential. But what if parts of our shared society are marginalized? Purposely, so that we don't have competition or don't have to engage with people who are different from us, or because we are perhaps afraid something will be taken away from us. We want to individually excel, but at what cost? Brene Brown, among other impressive researchers, discusses the concept of scarcity. What is enough? How do we strengthen our society without being afraid we will lose if others enjoy the same benefits? If we are part of the majority, do we take time to think about what it might feel like to be othered? Here are a few examples in our workplace for a specific marginalized community. 1/5 or 20% of LGBTQ Americans have experienced discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity when applying for jobs. Now let's add race into that mix. The figures are 32% people of color, and 13% identify as white. 22% of LGBTQ Americans have not been paid equally or promoted at the same rate as their peers. LGBTQ people are often subjected to biased jokes. 53% have heard lesbian or gay jokes. 37% have heard bisexual jokes. 41% have heard transgender jokes. Transgender workers are subject to different types of harassment than LGBT workers. This includes bathroom accessibility, being deliberately referred to by incorrect pronouns, and having to tolerate inappropriate questions, which can lead to employee disengagement and avoidance. During COVID, a few additional statistics I want to share with you. 40% of the industries in which LGBTQ employees hold jobs are those where employees face more exposure to infection and/or economic insecurity. 2 million LGBTQ workers are in restaurants and food services, and 1 million work in hospitals. 30% had reduced work hours, 12% became unemployed. These statistics are staggering, and one organization is addressing this issue head-on, from a true leadership lens, and has been since 2009. Welcome to Small and Gutsy, our podcast featuring nonprofits and social impact organizations under $10 million. My name is Dr. Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. We hope you'll love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. Please pass along any valuable information you hear today to others and send me the name of any organization you'd like featured at lwitkoff@gmail.com. That's 2 T's and 2 F's. StartOut is a community of LGBTQ founders, professionals, and their allies with a national membership of over 17,000. StartOut began in 2009 and has been the champion for LGBTQ entrepreneurs, promoting the successes of the LGBT community as well as researching the economic impact of LGBTQ entrepreneurs. Their mission is to increase the number, diversity, and impact of LGBTQ entrepreneurs and amplify their stories to drive the economic empowerment of the community. I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Andres Weidler, Executive Director. So let's get started. Welcome, Andres. Please share your passion for StartOut and how you got involved.
Thank you, Laura, for having me. I'm delighted to be here, and it's wonderful to be in your program. You know, like so many other people, you accidentally get onto a path, if you will, that seems perfectly logical after the fact, but when you actually make the decision, it's not the case. So I've been very passionate about entrepreneurship from my 20s onwards. I'm now in my 50s, of course. And so for a long time, I've also been passionate about the LGBTQ community. But as an entrepreneur, I just never had the time, or made the time, I should say. Yeah, when there was an opportunity at StartOut to get more engaged, it actually happened to be at a time when I could step back a little bit from my current duties, or then current duties. And it was just the perfect time for me, and I'm super honored that the organization, opted to give me the chance to run StartOut. So that was 6 years ago. We're coming up in 6 years, actually, and that was the best decision of my life, other than marrying my husband, of course.
That should be number one, right? You previously were both an entrepreneur. Were you in the tech industry, or what industry were you in?
So I came to California. I'm Swiss originally. I'm through Japan, came to California in '92, and I went to business school at Stanford, and that was a great opportunity, of course. And it was literally when the internet exploded. So I graduated in '94, and so I ended up staying in California to take advantage of those great opportunities and the exciting environment and all the forward-looking spirit of the valley. It was truly awesome. So I'm not a scientist or technologist by training. Most of my entrepreneurial activities were in the software space, some hardware, and quite a number of years in the clean tech space.
Really fascinating to sort of shift then into nonprofit from a for-profit perspective, and yet I'm sure that it gives you a lens by which you can, particularly because StartOut is focused on the entrepreneurial spirit of the LGBT community. So I wonder, can you share a little bit about that transition?
It's a very interesting question. And this is my first nonprofit gig. So I had zero experience in nonprofits before, which should have scared the board. I probably did, I don't know, but I made it very clear to them, listen, I have no clue about nonprofits. I'm happy to learn fast as I can, but I certainly do understand our audience. I've been your audience. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. It's interesting how nonprofits actually have changed quite a bit over the last decade, at least, maybe more. Again, I'm no expert in nonprofits, I mentioned that before. But I'm running the organizations like a for-profit. So same accountability, same metrics, stringent KPIs, let's make sure we have because we're all about impact, right? We don't want to just, be active, measure activities, raise money for it, which we always do as a nonprofit, and not deliver anything. So it's really about impact, and that's not that much different from reporting to your board of directors in a for-profit, annual goals, budget, what have you done, what have you missed, how are you going to fix it? That's pretty much all the same. What is a little different is the thank you loop. So there's more people to be thankful for. You want to acknowledge it, of course, but you also must acknowledge it. And so there's a little bit of flavor, different flavor. That's actually wonderful to deal with. It's a really incredible environment to be active and very rewarding, motivating and inspiring. But that may be a little different from the purely commercial aspect.
And I want to point out that since we've interviewed a number of organizations, there are a few executive directors that have come from the business community. And I find that so refreshing for exactly what you're saying, is I think the business principles that hold true in for-profit should also hold true in nonprofit, and you're evidence of that. Love that you talked about the differentiator around the thank you piece because of donors and people who, give in kind and so on and so forth. And yet I think that's truly in the for-profit arena in terms of good customer service. So it's just the terminology may be a little different, but I think you're essentially the perfect fit for this because of your experience being on the other side of the table. I want to jump into StartOut. I shared a few statistics in the beginning, probably quite a few, because the marginalized community that you raise visibility and really support through an entrepreneurial lens and spirit is something I'd like you to share with my audience about how it works and what you offer.
Yeah, thank you for introducing StartOut. You should be my spokesperson, actually. Of course, I couldn't afford you. But so we're all about the economic empowerment of our community, of the LGBTQ community. And it's interesting, there's some amazing organizations out there, like GLAD, like HRC, ACLU. There's so many who do fantastic work in terms of basic human rights, of equal rights. The economic piece seems to be its stepchild. I still don't know after 6 years whether that's the nature of the beast or whether that's by some neglect. But regardless, doesn't matter what the cause is. We're really focused on creating workplaces through our entrepreneurs that are inclusive, that provide equal opportunities. And by doing so, and by promoting and accelerating those businesses, create a virtuous cycle. So we have, as you mentioned just briefly in terms of differentiation, we have over 1,000 volunteers total, from mentors to angel investors who volunteer to view at our entrepreneurs deals, all the way to programming boards and more. So there's over 1,000 people who want all our entrepreneurs to be successful. And then, of course, the peer-to-peer support in addition to that. So that's now we're getting to 18,000. And so that's a tremendously valuable network to promote, to accelerate, to give equal opportunities, to be a shoulder to cry on, all the way to provide hardcore advice, money, mentorship, and so on. So we mean business. It's all about business. It's business with amongst each other. It's business with others, with allies, of course. So that's what we do.
It is such a beautiful concept because not only is it about sustainability, sort of in a large macro sense, but it's really about, for lack of a better, again, an idiomatic expression, truly coming out of the closet. You are here to stay and promote your community. And I'm guessing that the research end is really about the economic impact that lends itself to the greater society. Don't leave out this population that is creative, interesting, engaging, smart. That's what it feels like when I've been to your website and done some research.
Yeah, you missed one. We're a lot more fun to deal with.
Pre-COVID, I did get to go to an event. I went to a panel years ago, and I was so impressed, and it was really remarkable because the level of engagement that you have and the level of role modeling, I would say, which is part of your mentorship, is quite exceptional.
No, joking aside, of course it's true, but joking aside, it makes zero sense to exclude highly capable people from our economic activities. So the interesting part is, we're really focused on growth organizations, growth companies, and they wouldn't exist if it weren't for those entrepreneurs. So there is a net contribution to the GDP of our country, to the economic activity of our country, which benefits everyone through jobs, through inclusive workplaces, through taxes, and so on. So there's zero logical reason to exclude any minority group for that matter, and in our case, of course, LGBTQ+. So what we do, there's no way to be against what we do unless you have some other issue with LGBTQ people, which we don't want to get into. But so we found that unfortunately we still have a long way to go. We've done quite some research. We actually have a live site. It's an interactive dashboard where you can look up your own area, your own community, and so on. And we found that in 1/3 of all the major metropolitan areas, we have out LGBTQ growth entrepreneurs. But in 2/3, we don't. Only 1/3 have out entrepreneurs. So there's no way there aren't any out entrepreneurs there, which means we have a long way to go. Some of them, of course, moved. But why make people move away from their families, away from their friends, away from their first employees? And why lose out on all the economic success that you, as a community, supported by schooling them, bringing them up, providing all the public services, and so on. Makes zero sense. So how could you possibly be against what we're doing?
It is the only way that you can elevate an entire society is to include everyone. And that's what you're really talking about. When somebody who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur reaches out to StartOut, share with me sort of how does it work? How do people get engaged?
Thank you for that question. Yeah. So we're public, we're free, we're a nonprofit. So anyone who is LGBTQ plus as an entrepreneur or who's an ally who wants to support LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs is most welcome, is invited to join us. And the process is extremely simple. You simply sign up at startout.org as a member. It's free. And then you start to engage the way you like. So there's like 3 levels. There's the peer-to-peer support. We call it self-service from our perspective, but from a new member perspective is like figure out who you like to connect with and connect. Right? We have our private LinkedIn, if you will. We have forums. We have events. We have virtual events, networking events, educational events. Get to know people. You can search. You can filter them depending what you're interested in. And then if you're more serious about it, then you sign up for our founder services, which is like the mentorship program. We have an investor portal. When you're ready, investment ready for outside money. Most organizations, most entrepreneurs are not in the beginning, but we help them get there if that's the right path for them. It goes all the way to a 6 months intensive programs in our accelerator. So there's a lot of different levels. I don't want to say we have something for everyone. We're really focused on entrepreneurs who want to grow their businesses more so than mom or pop and pop shops. If they would like to join us, by all means, everyone's welcome. And most importantly, we very much welcome allies, because we don't want to create a parallel economy, right? We want our entrepreneurs to be fully integrated, not accepted, but embraced and integrated into our economic activity in our society.
I love that you said that, because it isn't exclusive. And that's what's so beautiful about it. You're looking for support because you're building an economic stronghold throughout by this support of this particular population, but everybody benefits.
We are as inclusive as possible because we want everyone to have a seat at the table, right? So just briefly to add one comment to the last question, if I may. Everyone having a seat at the table means there needs to be a seat at the table. And right now the table is occupied with our friends, our allies, and our foes. Typically there's no LGBTQ people there. So we don't want to take a seat away from them. We simply want to add a seat. And so that's why it's so important, right? The power right now is with friends and foes. And we need to be part of that group in order to get equal opportunities for everyone. We want to inspire as many entrepreneurs as possible. But there's two caveats to that. One is there's other organizations who really focus on that. It's Out for Undergrad, for example. They're doing great work. Ramba does great work for business students. There's a number of organizations out there who are probably better equipped to do that. And the second piece is an interesting one, and you might not expect that comment from me, but not everyone is born to be an entrepreneur. There's a mystique, especially here in Silicon Valley or in New York and other places, about how wonderful entrepreneurship is. The reality is 90% of entrepreneurs fail. So you want to be very careful what kind of bug you put into people's heads. Also the myth that most entrepreneurs are 20-something high school dropouts or college dropouts. That's simply not true. Like most entrepreneurs in their 30s and 40s. So it helps have industry knowledge, function knowledge, connections, potential clients, all those kind of wonderful things. So it's a little dangerous to plant the bug too early. It's great to inspire, but let's make sure they don't follow the siren song of entrepreneurship. They become entrepreneurs when it's really their place and their time, and if they're ready for it. A lot of people are fantastic employees, but not great entrepreneurs. And then a number of people are fantastic entrepreneurs and horrible employees, or not very good ones. And so you have to figure that out for yourself, which one is true for you.
The other question that it sort of occurs to me is I would imagine that some folks may start out with StartOut, and then realize that maybe they aren't meant to be an entrepreneur, or maybe they find something within the StartOut community where they want to partner. I don't know if you've seen any of that in the time that you've been there, and if you can share a little bit if you have.
We have seen every conceivable combination or journeys. Everyone in entrepreneurship is on a journey. We have, aspiring entrepreneurs who find great jobs with us, with our others. We have found advisors who suddenly became investors or became directors of companies. We have found, people who were dealing with entrepreneurial ventures and then found, some great connections to some low Fortune 500 companies. Like, you name it, we've seen it. We've seen super successful entrepreneurs that just went on to become serial entrepreneurs. We've seen successful ones who retired and just supporting others. We've seen some that just went to the beach and are great surfers now. It's a journey. People come in and out of entrepreneurship, which it's the nature of the beast. And if there's just suddenly these amazing opportunities where someone's seeking a co-founder and finds that perfect person at a startup event or through our networking, then great. If it doesn't happen, they find other inspiration. So we're here to connect. Someone call us Tinder for entrepreneurs. Definitely not on a personal side, but in terms of the networking, you need to be professionally successful. That's really what you get. You get a lot of different ways of connecting and being inspired, and we provide the platform, the network, the opportunities, but you come in and everyone has a different experience. We're supporting thousands of entrepreneurs, but one entrepreneur at a time. Every entrepreneur has needs right now, but they're rarely the same. So that's why we have this close to 1,000 volunteers, from mentors to advisors to other peers who provide their valuable input one-on-one at the very time entrepreneurs need it. And so there's no way to there's ways to create curricula and so on to give the basics, but fundamentally an entrepreneur never has time for anything. So they need support exactly when they need it, around the topic they need, from an expert who's versed in their industry and in their topic. So that's why numbers matter so much, and that's why it's critical to approach some of the leading networks in your industry. And in the LGBTQ space, we are fortunate to have that spot to get truly valuable advice.
You almost match it from an individual need perspective. And so for me, it begs a couple questions. The first is, how do you recruit volunteers on the mentorship side, and how does that work, and how have you done that? I'll let you answer that, and then I'll ask another one.
Yes, we have a fantastic network mentorship program. We're coming up at the end of the year on our 1,000th match. We know many corporate programs, to put it in perspective, that have 100, 150, 200. I'm talking mentorship programs of Fortune 500 companies. So in the beginning, I thought it was low, but I learned quickly that is actually pretty amazing. So we are matching them individually, person by person, and we're asking mentors very specific questions. We're asking mentees some of the same question to be able to match them with the right people, and then also in what specific areas they need support with. And so we ask them for 3 challenges. So we've got very, very granular in our approach, and that's why the mentorship program is so successful, because we're taking the time it takes. This is not an algorithm. Eventually, with thousands and thousands of people, we might be able to do that. But this is a manual approach. And yes, we are reaching out to mentors, people we feel like would be great people. And we're very, very fortunate that so many of them, LGBTQ and allies, are offering their services.
That's great. That was part of my second question. Are allies included in that group? So that's great that they are. Do you find that folks who have benefited from the platform and the way that you've connected them have become successful and then turn around and become a mentor?
A lot. And so I can give you, one of our Growth Lab graduates, Kelly. She's amazing. She's growing her business like mad. Wonderful. And I think she's already mentored 3 or 4 people. She's come through the ranks. She's super, super engaged. And input equals output. Just as I experienced when I taught a course, I spent a tremendous amount of time on that. And I felt like I got more out of it than all my students combined, even though it was a tremendous amount of work. Same with mentors. We hear it left and right. Now, it's so rewarding to do that and to help someone nurture their career, make them successful, get them to fulfill their dreams. It's incredibly rewarding. And interestingly enough as well, a lot of mentees have tons of expertise in other areas, actually nearly all of them, because we're looking at successful people in general, and they can at the same time be mentors in their area of expertise. So we actually have a couple dozen people right now who are both mentors and mentees at the same time. So it's a give and take, it's built in reciprocity, and our community is so incredibly generous. So this model works incredibly well, and I must say I'm very, very grateful to all those mentors who devote their time and expertise and passion to make our community successful.
What you give out comes back to you in so many ways, and StartOut is an absolute example of that, which I find it renews my faith, let's just put it that way, in how people can support one another. You're nodding, so you've experienced that.
I've not only experienced it, it's what gets me up every morning, what keeps me excited. It's like so many amazing people. And our research, the platform I mentioned, our StartOut Pride Economic Impact Index, that's on startout.org, proves it. There's so much inequality going on. You'd be surprised, even in areas like San Francisco, New York, you wouldn't expect that at all. In certain industries, there's still tremendous inequality. So it's a pretty bleak picture. So I was super excited about launching our index. And when I looked at the results, it's kind of, wow, we have a lot of work to do. But then you see, as you mentioned, Laura, you see all those amazing people who make you grateful every single day and keeps you going, because there's so many people, the majority of people, no matter what's in the press every day, want to do the right thing.
Are there any sort of aha moments you'd like to share?
So the big aha moments on the individual side, which actually is the most exciting, and we're so much driven by metrics, KPIs. We're our A type. We always want to exceed our KPIs, everything else. That's all nice, but the emotional piece is so wonderful. And so we have one of our growth lab. I mentioned growth lab. It's a 6 months intensive program. And so one of our entrepreneurs actually came out during the program. He's a veteran, and he's also from a race community that is less welcoming to LGBTQ people. And just being among other people who are going through the same experience. We all have our own journeys, but there's similar experiences. Just being part of that community of 6 to 8 entrepreneurs who go through this together, he felt comfortable enough to come out to his family, to all his business partners, to his clients, and he's thriving right now. So to me, he's not the one who raised the most money or hired the most people, but to me, that's just such an amazing story, and for that's what we live for.
I'm getting goosebumps with that story, because you want everyone to bring their whole self into whatever they do. And many of us can't, for a whole host of reasons they don't want to be alienated. They, as I mentioned in the opening, don't want to be othered. And so that story to me shows that your platform is so much more than a network. It's really a safe space and a safe community to be your full self. You test it out there, you're comfortable, and then you may be able to then really be out in all of your full self. And that's just a wish I wish for everyone. So thank you. I want to thank you for creating the space for that to happen, because everyone deserves that.
I couldn't say it more eloquently, and I gladly pass on your thanks to not only the StartOut team, but all the volunteers and all the members who make this possible. It takes a tremendous amount of effort.
And then on the research side, an aha moment. I didn't know if you were going there, but I didn't want to forget to include that piece.
So if you go to our Pride Economic Impact Index, it's like a map that you can see with all the major areas. And the size of the bubble, there's lots of bubbles there. The size of the bubble mentions how many entrepreneurs there are. And then the color of the bubble mentions, what the opportunity will be. So we're not only measuring contributions, but we're also measuring the unrealized potential based on some algorithm what it should be, what it could be. And so in other words, if you were equally welcoming to LGBTQ entrepreneurs than typically cis white males, this is the kind of economic activity you could have gotten over the last 20 years. So the big aha moment was you looked at the map and unbelievable how many of those dark red dots. Red is not good. Red is bad. Green is good. Or I shouldn't say bad. It's not a shaming exercise. Red means there's tremendous upside. Tremendous upside. And so look, if you in one of those metropolitan area cities with those small red bubbles, think twice. Think what you're missing. Think how many companies could be in your place. How many supportive, great members of society, of the economic society, and just society as a whole, you could retain or nurture, keep in your area, and at the same time be proud of the great companies they start. So there's just this incredibly positive feedback loop that you could enable. And we're looking at various options like policies and other areas, what actually could make that work. That's our next phase for the research. But the big aha moment was like, wow, 2/3 of metropolitan areas, not a single out LGBTQ entrepreneur. And that's just scary. So yes, it just means that let's go out beyond the major cities. And that's what we've actually started also with our services, right? We have an online portal that's accessible to everyone because we want everyone to have access to the expertise that resides in some of the major metropolitan areas. That all should be available to everyone. And that just means the aha moment is let's redouble our efforts to reach out to everyone throughout the country to give them equal opportunities.
I love that. I just love it. You mentioned in that a bit of the policy push. Is there an effort to break through some of the barriers in those areas? Or is your angle, let's go after the economic opportunities and then the political or barriers may wane?
So StartOut is a 501c3 and we're a non-political organization. So whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or in between, or none of the above, we welcome you. There's great organizations like the Williams Institute or the Gill Foundation and others who do terrific work, or Out Leadership as well. They're doing great work on those other areas. We as StartOut are focused on the economic empowerment of our community. So all our efforts are narrowly focused, if you will, on LGBTQ entrepreneurship and how that can be, pushed and nurtured and given an equal opportunity. So when it comes to policies, we're in the midst of integrating policy insights into our index, but that's not going to launch. We've announced it with the support of a major financial institution, so you can see it on our press releases, but that's not going to go live till we have the results. Very, very few organizations measure the contributions of LGBTQ people in general. The NGLCC has done some wonderful work on small and medium-sized LGBTQ-owned businesses, so shout out to NGLCC. But other than that, there's really no one out there who's measured the economic contributions. There's a lot of discussions about the pink dollar, so the purchasing power, which is also completely misleading because on average, the LGBTQ people are massively disadvantaged compared to their straight counterparts. So since no one else is doing it, we're doing it with the support of SOCOS, by the way, a research organization that does most of the work pro bono for us, which is fantastic. It's needed, and because it's needed, we're doing it, even though we're mainly a support organization for entrepreneurs with practical, tangible support. This is part of our mission.
I know you have a large membership nationally. Any thoughts about global? That may be too big of a question and unfair, but so much of entrepreneurship has a global reach nowadays, and I just didn't know if there were any talks or discussions about expansion.
So over 1,000 of our members are outside the United States. So we have partner organizations in a number of countries, I think over 10 by now. Similar organizations like what we do, who do tremendous work in their areas. So yes, eventually we will expand, but let's be clear, right? As I mentioned, the siren song of entrepreneurship earlier, we want to make sure to inspire people to become entrepreneurs, but once they are entrepreneurs, we need to have their backs. So we need to know the ins and outs. We need to be able to support them, whatever trouble they go through. We're no experts on Rwandan or Polish or North Korean entrepreneurship, if there is such a thing. I don't know in North Korea. It would be negligent on our part, and even dangerous. There's countries where there's the death penalty on being out, such as our LGBTQ activities. So how dare we, take the position that we know what's best for them? So we certainly cannot do that. That said, in places like London, like Paris, like Sydney, Berlin, Tokyo, there's areas where we have quite a number of members, and they actively participate in our network. They're mentors, they're mentees, they invest in our company. So absolutely, in those areas that are, that have an environment that's more closely resembles the United States, where there's more interaction, there definitely we have quite a bit of activity. If it's not our own, because we focus in the US entirely, there are a lot of partner organizations.
I know in the beginning you said you weren't sure, it is the right path. You love getting up and doing this job, but I think you're exactly the right person, both from your own entrepreneurial spirit and seeing that side, being a gay man married in our society today. So you've got that perspective. And the fact that you have these aha, beautiful moments that give you the reason to get up every day and go to work. It's a beautiful story all around. So I'm glad you're leading this organization. You are the perfect person to lead it, both with your background, your personal experience, and your ability to see the bright light that exists within the community of entrepreneurs whom you support.
You're being too generous, but thank you. I'll pass it on to the board to make sure they know that too.
Yes, let me speak to the board. I will speak to your board. This episode is sponsored by the Intrinsic Group, my boutique management consulting firm specializing in guiding organizations to leverage talent, optimize processes, and to ensure the organization's narrative is aligned with their culture. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, please reach out to us. To see all the small but mighty organizations we featured, check out our incredible infographics in the stories section of the Intrinsic Group website. As you may or may not know, toward the end of our podcast, we always do a round of quick and gutsy questions. They don't have to be that quick. It's totally up to you. They're a lot of fun. So are you ready for our quick gutsy round?
Definitely not.
What is at the top of your wish list, the wish list for StartOut? However, the answer can't be money or funding.
Spirit of giving back, instilling the spirit of giving back, that everyone gives back once they've, or not even once they've received something, but even before. So furthering that spirit, that's on top of mind.
There is research and there are several books out about the subject of giving and giving first. And I really appreciate that. If you were to think of a song that describes StartOut, what would it be?
Well, Lady Gaga's Born This Way, probably.
I absolutely love it. That's a great song and perfect. What makes StartOut gutsy?
Necessity.
Yeah. Do you want to say a little more?
If you don't have equal opportunities, you have to fight harder. And when you fight harder, you harden yourself. You see things in different perspective. You become a great entrepreneur. You also know how to take risks, because without taking risks, you're not going to get anywhere. No one's given things in the first place. That's a myth for privileged people as well, but they're given more than others. And so we have all kind of different levels of privilege as well, or lack thereof, in our community, and each case is different. I wouldn't even want to, use too many labels, but that makes you gutsy. You have to be gutsy to get there. You've experienced in the past that if you're not gutsy, you're not going to get anywhere.
I think StartOut defines gutsy because of what you just shared. So I think the definition of gutsy is now StartOut. How about that? It's true. What is something that outsiders and maybe even a few insiders don't know about StartOut?
How small we are.
Yeah.
we look a lot bigger. Well, we've just actually, we grew from 5 to 13 full-time employees this year alone. So COVID required us, massively increased by choice or by necessity the need for our services. And so we also know now that our programs work after trial and error over many years. So we feel very comfortable and confident that our programs work. So we're just staffing up to meet the demand. So that is pretty awesome, and it won't go away quite in the country. There's more and more need to support people. There's more and more people who want to support. So massively expanding the platform with services, but mostly with more people to simply act upon those connections. That's what we need to do.
The optic of being so much larger is really a credit to the amount of work you all do as a core team, as well as the volunteers who have contributed. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about StartOut, who would it be?
One celebrity I would love to endorse StartOut is actually Steven Spielberg. Now, Steven Spielberg is one of my heroes because he always asks the most out of everyone. It's not always pleasant to work with him, I've heard. I've never worked with him. But he's always asked the most, and most importantly, he's shown a lot of actors and other creative personnel or talent that their limits are much farther out than they thought. So he basically widened their horizon. He pushed them further than they ever thought they could go, and thus greatly increased, their understanding of who they are, their performance. So for me, it'd be phenomenal if Steven Spielberg, if you know him, please call him up. If Steven Spielberg were to support us. Might not be the most, I don't know, there's of course more biggest celebrities right now these days, younger ones, but that was certainly someone I'd be thrilled.
So how do folks reach you? I know you mentioned it earlier, but I want to...
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's super simple, super low barrier. Just go to www.startout.org and you'll find all the information on who we are, what we do, and so on. And there's a membership button. Again, it's free. We never say no to donations, of course. But as a nonprofit, I have to put it in there. Yeah, so this is just a start, and then explore, take a little time, and then get active in forums, in events, participate in events, check us out. When you're ready, then get more active, and you'll be most welcome. Again, as I mentioned, our services are uniquely and solely for LGBTQ entrepreneurs, but if you want to support LGBTQ entrepreneurs, we welcome you with open arms.
That's great. And I also encourage folks to check out the research side, as you pointed out, because I think that is going to be very eye-opening. And for those who live in any of those communities that have those red bubbles, here's an opportunity to really support StartOut entrepreneurs in those regions, to stay in those regions and feel safe and secure and comfortable. So that's my little plug for that piece of it, because I think it's so essential, and I'm so happy you all started in 2009 and are going strong. So I just want to take a moment and thank you, Andres, for being part of Small and Gutsy, and hopefully you'll grow into big and more impactful than you already are. I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me, and I hope my listeners have learned as much as I have through this interview. It's been really lovely.
Thank you, Laura, for having me, and to your listeners, thank you for taking the time as well.
Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars, and write a review on wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're interested in sponsoring a Small and Gutsy episode to keep it going, please reach out to me or buy us a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/small-and-gutsy. Just an FYI, for those of you who might want to be a Small and Gutsy patron, we just released our Patreon site with some really fun first edition Small and Gutsy merchandise. So check us out to support this effort at patreon.com/small-and-gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, meaning we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, the volunteers, my co-producer, sound engineer, and composer, the amazing Pavel Franson, my social media maven, Delania Tirado, my infographic creator extraordinaire, Sonia Fizek, Nate Addy for the exceptional logo, and all the friends and family who have guided and inspired me. A very special thank you to my biggest champion, without whom I could not have created this project, my very best friend and a true sounding board. Thanks, Mark Witkoff. Thanks for being there. From small and gutsy to big with impact, I'm Laura Witkoff, and thanks for listening.